Welcome, everyone. I am so glad you could join us today for this special gathering around the next generation of diverse leaders. I'm really excited to hear from these dynamic leaders today, and I think that we will all benefit from their wisdom. It's especially important to me that we have the conversation around the next generation of diverse leaders because it's critical to have diversity of thought and lived experience as decisions are being made about the future of Greater Houston. We believe that engaged discussions on issues of race, equity, inclusion, and belonging will strengthen the fabric of our community. And we want to ensure diversity of thought, better understand culturally focused philanthropy, and amplify the voices of those who are working to create the community that we all want to see. Here at United Way of Greater Houston, when we look at our mission through the lens of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, we strive to build stronger communities by creating the opportunity for individuals and families all across Greater Houston to thrive. We do that through the creation and funding of programs which address the economic, educational, and assistance disparities caused by generations of systemic institutional racism and other barriers. And we work to do so in an equitable, reflective manner, regardless of race, gender identity, sexual orientation, religion, nationality, culture, age, or physical ability or lived experience. And for us, as we do that work, we think about the following strategic priorities and how we carry ourselves in that work. First is to be a cultural champion, to nurture and defend an organization-wide culture of participation and representation. The next principle is really being ready to learn and grow, embracing the expectation and establishing a curriculum of constant education and training. Be reflective. Strive to create and maintain an organization whose composition reflects the rich diversity of the communities we serve and represent. We also focus on being proudly intentional, really being intentional and clear regarding our focus on matters of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging when speaking to and working with civic and business leaders, elected officials, and other organizations. And finally, be accountable. Be data and fact-driven in areas of funding, investment, and recruitment. Measure the change and celebrate the impact. We are extremely thankful to have you all on this journey with us and to have this platform to discuss and share ideas and experiences. Before we get started, I'd like to tell you a little bit about some of the things going on right now at your United Way. The last 18 months have been challenging for all of us across the community. And we are extremely grateful that so many of you have so generously supported our everyday work to help our neighbors thrive, plus our efforts to help the most vulnerable of our neighbors through COVID-19 and the February winter storm. Thank you. Last year, this community came together to raise $55.8 million for the community campaign. On top of that, we partnered with the Greater Houston Community Foundation to raise $18 million for the Greater Houston COVID-19 Recovery Fund and another $17.5 million for the Houston-Harris County Winter Storm Relief Fund. Those both helped thousands of families recover from disaster. I know many of you supported these efforts on top of your already generous support of United Way. We really can't thank you enough. While most of the last year and a half has been, a lot of it has been about overcoming and navigating through crises. It's also for United Way been about building the foundation for our second century vision, which we are very, very close to fully implementing. We're very excited. We know that almost half of our neighbors across Greater Houston were struggling to make ends meet before the pandemic, its economic repercussions, and the winter storm. And we also know that truly lifting families up and helping them achieve financial stability and long-term success means doing something different. Our second century vision is all about creating the opportunity for families and individuals across our community to thrive through financial stability programs, early childhood and youth development programs, physical and behavioral healthcare programs, all of which is supported by a foundation of basic needs assistance and making sure we provide support for those trying to escape violent situations. There are a few other pieces that are key to this work. One is a focus on equity. We know that truly creating opportunities for people to thrive means working to close the opportunity gap, which we know is wider for people of color. So we are focused on work that makes headway against racism and underrepresentation and builds greater equity in our community. Another is the role of navigators. Navigators work with individuals and families to determine their needs and build an individualized pathway to achieving those goals, helps them make connections to programs and services, and supports clients as they move through that journey to financial stability. And last, but certainly not least, is what we are calling the integrated client journey. The integrated client journey is all about creating a partnership with the families we serve. It is about families deciding what their pathway looks like with support from a coach. It allows individuals and families to create their own customized plan for programs and services based on their unique goals and needs. Then, rather than working separately to address individual needs, partners can coordinate programs to make it easy for clients to engage across services as needed. It's really kind of a coordinated care network for social services, if you will. As we prepare to fully launch Second Century Vision in the new year and make our first investments as part of that strategic plan, I want you all to feel confident that United Way is investing your gifts and services that make a real and lasting difference in people's lives. We are truly fortunate to have so many committed volunteers, including some of you, who have lent their time and expertise to reviewing hundreds of funding applications, studying programs, studying funding requests, helping us make sure that we have an open, equitable, and effective funding process, and making sure we have the right partners and services to carry out this work. Thank you to those who have volunteered as part of this investment process. Your participation is so important. And thanks to all of you for the many ways you support United Way's mission and work to lift up our neighbors and our community. I'm excited to have the opportunity to deepen our relationships with you and hear your thoughts and ideas about how we move forward. Now, I'm very happy to introduce Dr. Angel Harris, who is our Vice President and Chief Advancement Officer for United Way of Greater Houston. Angel joined our United Way in January of this year. Angel's more used to winter weather than we are, so we had to apologize when the winter storm came. We can handle a Category 5 hurricane, but winter storm down here is something a little bit different. She comes to United Way with more than 20 years of nonprofit leadership and fundraising experience. That includes 17 years in development roles with United Way of Central Ohio, where she finished her career there as Senior Vice President and Chief Development Officer. Throughout her career, Angel has demonstrated a true passion for creating greater opportunity and impact through strong partnerships and collaboration, which are hallmarks of United Way's success today and critical to the success of our strategic plan, Second Century Vision. Angel is going to share a little more about our work and vision and introduce our moderator and panelists. Angel?
Thank you, Amanda. Thank you so much for your leadership and for your authentic advocacy for this important work. We really appreciate you. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm thrilled to be with you, and I'm grateful that your journey brought you to us today to kickstart this important conversation. We are fortunate to live in a community with rich diversity and a variety of perspectives, and we want to explore those perspectives and your desires to shape the greater Houston community. And we want to be a supportive catalyst for leaders of color as you take on progressive roles of influence and use your voice to create the community that you want to see. Today, we have a group of our community's most influential leaders who will help us all by sharing their experiences. We also want to engage you in the chat today, so share your thoughts and perspectives along the way during our session. Let's begin in the chat by you popping down below, clicking on the chat button and typing in your name, your affiliation with United Way, and your employer if you're comfortable doing so. We're planning more activities in 2022 to deepen our relationships and begin developing a more informed understanding of philanthropy of different cultures. We want to find even more ways to transform communities with engaged leaders, helping us forge a new path. Today's panel discussion will kick off our efforts to do so. Our goal today is to share strategies for leaders as we walk in our purpose and assume leadership roles across Greater Houston. With us today, we have United Way donors and volunteers, leaders of corporate business resource groups, community leaders, United Way Project Blueprint alumni are also joining us today. If you're not familiar with United Way's Project Blueprint, it's a program that prepares emerging and current leaders in our multicultural community for leadership roles on nonprofit and public sector boards and committees. We also have a great moderator and group of panelists. Our moderator, Dr. Tammy Smithers, is a rock star. She's an executive consultant with Bridge Philanthropic Consulting. Dr. Smithers is a scholar and a thought leader on issues of racial and ethnic inequity, gender disparity, diversity, and inclusion, and is a gifted facilitator. We're so grateful that you joined us today for this important conversation, Dr. Smithers.
Thank you.
We're also grateful to the fabulous group of panelists joining us today. Stephen Frag, president of Tejas Office Products and former United Way of Greater Houston trustee. Wayne McConnell, managing partner, McConnell and Jones, and current United Way trustee. George Yang, chairman and CEO, Asia Chemical Corp, former United Way trustee. And Anita Weber-Smith, founder and owner of Webb Design Interior and United Way Women's Initiative member. I would be remiss if I also didn't share heartfelt congratulations to Anita and Gerald for the recent induction to the Texas Business Hall of Fame. You both work so hard and tirelessly, and you continue to speak out and support the community in a remarkable way. We're grateful for your thought leadership that sparked this idea, Anita, and we're excited to have the opportunity to support diverse leaders as we continue to take seats at important tables. Thank you all. Now, I will turn the summit over to the hands of our dynamic Dr. Tammy Smithers. Dr. Smithers?
Thank you for that lovely introduction. And I'm just smiling here because I'm seeing all of these Project Blueprint graduates here. So I'm just delighted to first start off by just saying thank you for allowing me the opportunity to moderate this very important discussion on the next generation of diverse leaders. And this is a lead into the Town Hall Summit for future conversations. So I'm grateful to begin this discussion today. As I just mentioned, I am a Project Blueprint alumni from 25 years ago. It's class 16 if you're counting. I am delighted to see that United Way is continuing this work to actually just foster this diverse talent pipeline of individuals who are not only trained, but who are ready to lead and take their seat at the table. Over the past several years, the economic shift and racial climate illuminated a renewed call for reimagining diverse and equitable ways to rethink community and philanthropy. It was Dr. Martin Luther King who expressed the following: philanthropy is commendable, but it must not cause the philanthropist to overlook the circumstances of economic injustice which make philanthropy necessary. Nonprofit organizations, which we are representing here today, serve as the voice for the oppressed and marginalized. And in the beginning of this year, I had an opportunity to speak to the head of the Association of Fundraising Professionals, which is a 28,000 member organization of individuals who are raising funds for the work that we're speaking about today, the mission of not-for-profits. These individuals doing this work cannot do this work alone. It is a collaboration of leaders who embody what I like to term the ABCs, and that's community advocates, community builders, and community champions. So as Dr. Harris already mentioned, that many of you are in the room today who are donors, volunteers, Project Blueprint alum, you're workers of employee resource groups. All of you here today who may not be representing a United Way agency, I did a little homework here and I wanted to share that there is a not-for-profit sort of connection that United Way has that provides additional support for those of you who are not working with affiliated nonprofit organizations. And what I've just learned is that it's a resource for mission-centered organizations that provides the knowledge and skills to include developing talented leaders, creating dynamic and engaging boards, recruiting and retaining capable staff and volunteers, and giving nonprofits tools to manage and operate effectively. And I'm sharing that because I represent many of those not-for-profits in the work that I do as an executive consultant. So with that, I want to just start us off with what the flow of this hour is going to look like, okay? What we're going to do is have this discussion with the panelists. I'm going to direct two different questions to the panelists, and each of them will respond to that question. I'm also going to poll you, the audience, with 3 different questions. So this is going to require a little bit of interaction. So hopefully you all are familiar with Zoom and will be able to check the instruction for the response to that particular poll question. As we're discussing today, if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat, and I have someone who is basically taking those questions, feeding me those questions, and I will ensure that your question gets answered. And I may call on you as we get into the Q&A portion of this segment, so that you have an opportunity to really have your voice be heard. So with that, I'm going to begin with my first question. And this question will be directed to Wayne. So the first question I have for the panel is, what has been your experience as a BIPOC leader who has worked to build a stronger community? And I'll define BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and people of color, just so that those of you who are not familiar with that term know what I'm speaking about. So Wayne, would you want to ask that question or answer that question for us first?
Well, good afternoon, first of all, and thank you, Dr. Smithers. I'm really glad to get a chance to participate in this event. So I'll start by saying that I grew up in a small church in Baptist church in North Louisiana, and I always heard the words that we are here to do the will of the one who sent us here, right? And so on my journey here, I've worked very hard to find and fulfill my purpose for being, and giving is certainly a part of a part of that purpose. We've all heard that giving is the other side of that coin of receiving. And so as I've worked with nonprofits here, in the Houston community, I've received so much more than I've given. I've been able to develop very strong and positive relationships with my fellow board members and with members in the community. It's been very instructive to me and has helped me, with my business. And as we have developed our culture here at McConnell & Jones, the work that I've done out in the community has enabled me to provide some guidance to how we have developed our culture here. So this has been a very positive experience for me, and as I've, worked with different organizations, typically I've gravitated toward those organizations who have a mission of giving back, back to the community, an organization that's working to build a stronger community focused on the underserved population. I'm in my second tour of duty on the board of the United Way, and when I was asked to come back, it was an easy decision to decide to re-enlist, so to speak. So Amanda, you mentioned earlier the second century vision, and I'm just so excited about the direction that the United Way is headed, and really looking forward to working with United Way as well as the other nonprofits here in the Houston area to continue to build a really strong community. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I'm going to direct the next George to answer that question as well. Do you want me to repeat the question? George?
Yes. Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Let me see.
We can hear you. You're good.
Okay. Well, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm honored to have the opportunity to come here to talk about my experience. I was born and raised in Taiwan. After graduate from college, I came to the States to attend graduate school to pursue higher education. After getting my PhD and I worked in academic for several years, I decided to stay in America and pursue my career as an entrepreneur. After a brief stay in Los Angeles, we came to Houston in 1978 when it was an oil booming town. At that time, there were many first-generation Taiwanese immigrants with similar background like me. They are professionals with high degree of education. I used my network to form the Taiwanese Chamber of Commerce and serve as its founding president. I felt it was important to try and integrate the Taiwanese community with Houston as a whole. We found an opportunity to partner with the United Way when Dr. Judy Craven was the president. I worked with the staff to connect Asian business organizations and individuals to encourage them to join the United Way. We even had an Asian Pacific Islander Gala event to promote United Way to the Asian community and raise funds for United Way. I was offered to join the American Leadership Forum, class 14, where I met diverse group of community leaders. Truthfully, this community has supported me and I've been able to form a successful and a comfortable life for myself and my family. I feel honored to be able to give back and be visible, active in the community as a member of BIPOC. And that's my experience. And the United Way has been it's a good conduit for me to participate in this community.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I see the chat. Yes, Dr. Craven is here on the town hall. Welcome, Dr. Craven. Thank you so much for the work that you have done over the years. And thank you, Dr. Yang. The next question the next panelist, Anita, would you mind giving us your thoughts on that question?
Again, it has been an honor to be with this esteemed group today. And I look forward to learning a whole lot more about some of these leaders. What my husband and I have both tried to do, as we've always said, is we're blessed to be a blessing to others. I have noticed when some of the boards I've been on from the get-go, which has been a long time, is that again we have been the first on the board, and we're kind of expected to kind of promote our community. And so Gerald and I have worked really hard to try to advance our community with whatever we do on boards or wherever we are when it comes to donating funds, that type of thing. But sadly, I've noticed, I've been on some boards where I've suggested, let's make sure that we reach out to minority builders or minority resources to put them into the game of, and I've noticed when we go for presentations, these leaders, these groups, they are not prepared. The professional, more majority corporations, they run circles around our leaders, our community organizations, our builders, all of it, just run circles around them. So I realize that we are not equipped to be in the big leagues. And I would love to see, again, that's kind of that equality versus equity, and that everyone needs to be provided with the proper tools in order to succeed. So that is what I've noticed, and I hope we can do something about that, because it looks as if we're not showing our most professional side, but when you think about it, maybe we're just not prepared correctly to be in the big.
And you're speaking of community members of color? Is that what you're, okay.
Yeah, because when I speak of community, I'm talking about community because we work towards serving the community that looks like us.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that would be my goal, and that's what I'm hoping to see happen here, is that we need more equity.
Mm-hmm. More equity.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And I'm taking notes as you all have been talking. And last but not least, Stephen, that question is yours next.
Thank you, Dr. Smithers.
Yes.
Pleasure to be here. And want to echo what Wayne and George and Anita have said as well. I come about it a little different. I'm a second generation Houstonian, so born and raised here in Houston. And I watched the philanthropic side by watching my parents when they were here. My dad started this company. We'll be celebrating our 60th anniversary next year. We are a second generation provider of office supplies, and that is very broad now because of obviously the world has changed on us in the last really 18 to 19 months with what's happened with COVID. And so on my side, what I've been trying to do as I've watched my father, he kind of gave me the opportunity to follow in his footsteps. He was very involved at the United Way. Growing up, I would ask him in the morning, "Where are you going, Dad?" He's like, "I'm going to my United Way board meeting." And now my sons ask me as well, and it's kind of become a joke because I was on the United Way for about 7 years, and then my tour of duty was over, and I've got to chair the Community Impact Committee, which was an incredible committee to be a part of, because I really got to learn all the great things the United Way does and all the great agencies we're involved in and what all these great nonprofits are doing in Houston and the surrounding communities. But kind of to Anita's point, it was that inclusion of needing more minorities there to help with the vision, with the strategy of what was going on with these agencies. You see all these great agencies, but their boards are not indicative of the demographics that it needs to be, as well as at the United Way, and it's something they've strived for. So I think what I've been fortunate to do and be able to do, and hopefully continue to do and encourage others, is we need to, all of us that are on these boards, we need to bring the diverse folks that we know. But to Anita's point, I think what she was trying to say is they need to be ready as well. Mm-hmm. And we're learning. So we're not all ready. We're not all polished. And I'm still learning. We're always still learning. And with that, I've had the opportunity, like George, I was in ALF class 33. My father was class of 9. My uncle Felix was class of 6. So I grew up in it. So I have that advantage of being able to see it. I also did the Center for Houston's Future. So with all that came along was the opportunity really that my father gave me. And then the mentorship that he gave me, and he just basically dragged me to this stuff and just showed me at a young age. And then of course, what I'm trying to do now as I've gotten older is provide young Hispanics that opportunity as well. And I need to do a better job of that. I have not been able to do quite as much impact as I would have liked. But I think the United Way and these organizations, their heart's in the right place. They have that intention. We as leaders, I think, need to help them find those folks. And I know this is, the next generation of leadership. And, as we get older, we need to find that next generation, and they're out there and they care. They just need the help. And some of that time is either they need the resources, either financially, or they need the mentorship. And so, with that, that's how I kind of got to where I was with my family, by just watching and learning. And then I've been very fortunate to have a lot of great organizations that asked my father to be a part of, and then I was able to follow in his footsteps. And it's been an honor, and it's allowed me to get into the boardrooms of companies and nonprofits that I necessarily wouldn't have had that opportunity. So I don't want to waste that. And I hope that I can continue to help and get other minorities into the door as well.
Excellent points. You all have touched on some amazing points that leads into the next poll question that I want to put up for the audience. And so I'm going to ask this question, and then if you can just make your responses known by clicking here. So the question is, what support do you need that will allow you to more effectively use your voice to help families in your community? And so if each of you in the audience here can just select an answer, and we're going to see what the polling responses are. I'll give you a few minutes to do that. Mentorship is first here, and that is what Stephen just mentioned. You mentioned it a couple of times, Stephen, I noted in your response to me. Second is financial resources, and third is additional training. So I think that that's something we can definitely touch upon, and I know that the United Way is already doing the training, so that's good, but we can maybe talk about that in some of the Q&A sections as we get to that portion. Thank you. I'm going to move on to the second question to the panelist, and that is, so what advice would you give to leaders with aspirations to create the community they want to see? And Wayne, I'm going to start again with you, just so that we can get you some airtime.
Okay, all right, great. Thank you, Dr. Smithers. The first thing that I would say, and I've lived by this mantra, is that I always look to find a cause that I was passionate about, one that was aligned with my core values, and all of us have heard, if you're doing what you're passionate about, it doesn't feel so much like work, and so that's, I think, is a very important piece of the of the puzzle. We've all been blessed with unique gifts, and I think it's our responsibility to do the work to ascertain or to determine what your unique gift is, and utilize those unique gifts to give back to the community. Secondly, I think it's important for us to recognize that we really have more in common than we might think, and even with that, there's just so much, too much division, in this country, and we all have, a heart. We all have 2 lungs, 2 feet. We all have to have air to breathe. So there's just so much more that we have in common. And if we would focus more on what we have in common, as opposed to looking at what are the perceived, what I would say are perceived differences, I just think that there would be, we would be so much better off. There's strength in diversity. There's no question about that. There's ethnic diversity. There's diversity of thought, unique perspectives, diverse perspectives. And I think it's important that as we work together, that we're able to withstand the tension of those opposing perspectives. Iron sharpens iron, right? And so if we could have the courage and the strength to stay in the room when those diverse ideas come to the table, you can transcend those differences, rise above those differences, and arrive at a better solution, arrive at a better outcome. Kind of a new way of doing things is how I like to, how I like to put it. And so I just think those are a few points that, we as leaders and aspiring leaders should focus on, as we try to build this stronger community.
Excellent. Thank you. Great points. I'm going to ask Stephen, do you want to go next?
Sure, just gotta demute it. All right, I said I was gonna get T-shirts made that said you're still on mute. Make a lot of money and sell those. Sorry, Doctor, repeat the question again.
What advice would you give to leaders with aspirations to create the community that they want to see?
Yeah, so to kind of echo what Wayne was saying, I think you do have to find something that you are passionate about. And we've been, as a family, and trying to do stuff here at Tejas with regarding education. So if you can find something that you've got passion about and find the right the mentors to help you there, I think that's where you can kind of focus in on, because you can't be everything to everyone. And if you take little chunks at a time, I think that helps. And I think people get frustrated or they get overwhelmed. You can't solve all the world's problems. So there's always going to be folks out there that need something. And so if you can kind of find something that you can focus on and be impactful and then be passionate about it, that does a lot. Because again, you get spread too thin and then you don't do anything, can't get anything done. And that also hurts too with board participation. If you're on too many things, then you're not as impactful. So sometimes you do have to say no. And I think if you can, have the courage to say no, but really on the couple of things you are going to focus on, if you can bring that passion like you do to your job, to your life, to your family, I think that really helps and it can help the community. So that's what I would say is almost the same thing Wayne said, is find something you really love to do and whatever that is. And then you don't necessarily have to have the money side of it, the resources, but just you're being involved and getting others involved and finding those folks that are also passionate about that. There is strength in numbers.
Excellent, excellent. Dr. Yang, what advice would you give to leaders with aspirations to create the community that they want to see?
Okay. Yes, I agree that you need to have passion, but in order to achieve the goal, the lesson is there's always opportunity to connect people. There's always a pockets of people in need and a pockets of people have the means to support who may not have who may not know they can support the community. Your position as community leader help you connect these two groups. You may have frustration because people may not have the same level of interest. But at the end of the day, you will find that most people are very supportive and you will feel very rewarding at the end. So the passion and to connect the people who can work together and just be patient when you find some people are not with you on the boat, but you will find out most of the people, they are going to be supportive. So
excellent, thank you. Right, I got the passion part and the connection with people. And I want to say, last but not least, Anita, I can repeat the question for you. What advice would you give to leaders who have with aspirations to create the community that they want to see, just as you and Gerald have done so graciously?
Well, I'd like to say, don't lose sight of your community and who you want to, or who you're there to serve. Raising money from outside of the community is what usually happens anyway, because the communities we're wanting to serve, they don't have those types of financial resources. So we find ourselves going out to raise these funds. But sometimes the people that want to donate or sponsor programs and do things do not always have the community in their thought process. Say, for instance, there may be a bank that wants to come into the community and set up an ATM station. But what about the bank just coming into the community and offering or providing loans, you know, and providing access to capital? These are the things that our community needs. It's well-wishers it's awesome. And that's where we have to go out and get these funds. And I thank you for all of those that are willing to write these checks. But we have to remember really how will this affect our community? It sounds like a warm and fuzzy idea, oh boy, but does that really help the people we want to serve? So that's what I would suggest for our future leaders. Always bear in mind who you're serving. Don't lose sight of that.
And your example just was a great example of equality versus equity, right? Equality, putting the ATM bank there because everybody else has a ATM, but the equity piece is the access and the ability to create the resources for those communities that may not have the ability to rise to that same level. Wonderful example. That's what I took away from much of what you said as well. I have two poll questions that I want to engage the audience with, and the second question is as follows. Can we put that up, please? Okay, so the second diversity town hall question is, how can United Way support your efforts? So this is you, the audience in the town hall. How can United Way support your efforts? And just please give us a couple of minutes to give your responses here. So let's see there. So the greatest answer there is the first one: host community conversations about issues that are important to the community. Okay, that's good. That's good. And go ahead and put the next question up, the third town hall question. And how well, this is to the participants, how well do you and people you know understand the work of United Way and what we're doing to support BIPOC communities? And we'll give you a few seconds to respond to that because we want to get 15 minutes of Q&A. Okay. Okay, if you can go ahead and put those responses there. A little, so that's interesting. How well do you and people you know understand the work of United Way and what we're doing? So a little, so we definitely have to address that. And also they said, well, so that's kind of an interesting, two of them are sort of close in number there. That is something we'll come back to, and I want to kind of get to these questions here. So if you can start to build your questions in the chat. I have a few that have already come up, and I will mention who I want to answer the questions. So one of the questions here that I'm reading, and I'm reading from the chat, is, can one of the panelists share their thoughts on how this particular dialogue will help bridge the gap between rational thought and rational action? That's a great question. And any one of you can take that question. Who wants to go? Who wants to respond to that question?
Dr. Smithers, do you mind if I kick it off and then our panelists could also share?
Sure. Go ahead.
Fantastic. We'll talk a little bit more towards the end of the session about some next steps and opportunities that United Way will be providing to bring leaders together to take that next step between thought and action. So just wanted to share that. I'll talk about it a little bit later today, but I wanted to be responsive to JP's request.
Okay. Thank you, Jeffrey. So, are there any questions? Someone asked the question, and I think it's a good question. How do you regularly review diversity leadership progress within your companies? And so I think that I want to start with Stephen on that question, because you did mention you focused on something in particular, which was education. Do you mind responding to that question?
Question one more time, Dr.
It's how do you regularly review diversity leadership progress within your companies?
Okay, so for my company, we are about 46 employees, and about 75% of our employees are minorities. So a small company with a small leadership management in place, but I also have some family members that work here. But in terms of where we have diversity opportunities and to be able to help, what we do here, I am happy that our management team is very diverse. We've represented by most of the folks on this call and our management team. And so really for a company our size, when we do talk about things, opportunities like that, it's a little different for us because of the size of our company and the nature of what we do. But I think, in terms of what's happened with COVID, and actually when we talk about the equity side of it and I'm not necessarily answering the question directly, but in terms of wages. So to be able to give folks that opportunity to give back, and Anita kind of hit on this, you've got to be able to have the financial resources. So for us as a company, it's dual for us. We need supplier diversity efforts to be sincere, to be real, and to really give us that opportunity. Now, when we get that opportunity, to Anita's point, we need to be ready to perform. We need to be ready to present, and we need to be ready to put our best foot forward and have a value proposition that corporations need. But we also need that opportunity to be able to do that. So without supplier diversity, to be very honest, a company our size, we're competing with the big guys. Mm-hmm. And we've got Amazon out there, which everybody in the last 18, 20 months has ordered from. So as we compete with the big folks, we need to be able to have those opportunities, but we need to be able to then have an educated workforce and still have that manual labor out there for what we do. Drivers and you've heard about the supply chain and all those things that are coming on. So for all those issues, you still got to obviously have the financial resources and run your company well. I am proud that we do have a very diverse leadership here that we're able to work with. But in terms of promoting and being able to look at that and review it for a company our size, I will admit we don't necessarily do that formally, but by natural attrition and natural the way we do it and having people the same that look like you. I mean, my management team looks like us and we're very diverse, but for us to be able to provide opportunities, we've got to have supplier diversity sincerely give us those opportunities. And then at the same time, we have to be able to perform. And then if we can do that, then we can spend more money on our employees and they can in turn better their families. And it's that chain that continues. So I'm not sure if I directly answered the question.
I think that works. I believe that works. I'll give this opportunity. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. As you know, I have to jump off for
yes, that's right.
Another appointment. But I did want to piggyback on what Stephen said in connection, with that question, because we're a diverse-owned business. We're African American owned firm, and about 65% of all of our staff are ethnically diverse. I mean, we've made a conscious effort to provide opportunities for folks that look like us or from that Bypoc BIPOC community.
Mhm.
And one of the things that we've done to monitor and take a look at this is conduct surveys of our staff to get some sense of what our DE&I efforts are doing, because we are participating with the down at the Greater Houston Partnership. They had a racial equity committee. I'm on that committee, and just as the large businesses have been responding to the survey instruments that they've been delivering, our HR team is participating in that. So we're actively involved, from that perspective. So there's a fair amount of interaction going on here within our organization, with the Greater Houston Partnership efforts to achieve racial equity, in the Houston region. So I just wanted to chime in there, and thank you everyone for the opportunity to participate here. And I'm on to my next commitment. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Nice to meet you. And I'm going to continue here, and I'm going to engage the audience. I have names by some of the questions here. Courtney Taylor, is she here? I'm going to allow you to ask your question. Do you mind asking your question? Go ahead.
Yes, I'm here. Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. I'm Courtney Taylor, Senior Vice President, Community Development for Veritex Community Bank, and also a Project Blueprint alumni, Class 31. So one of my questions is, how are more seasoned leaders planning to sponsor young leaders like myself? Just being able to, get at particular seats, be at specific tables to help impact those different nonprofit organizations. Earlier, I heard, sponsors mentioned or, mentors mentioned, but what does that look like for the next generation of leaders coming in from, I'm a millennial, but there's, this next generation under us so what does that look like coming down the pipeline?
I think that, Stephen, you mentioned mentoring in your responses earlier. Do you want to take that one?
Right. So I think, Courtney, very, very good question, because that is the question for the boards that I have served on. And it's not that I don't have an answer, but I think it's a very good question in the sense that we do need to know, and it's a cliche, the bench strength, the pipeline. There are organizations like the Hispanic Chamber. I know here that Dr. McConnell has done a great job of doing board preparation and finding those folks that can be the next generation. So I think there are some nonprofits out there. There's some Chamber of Commerces that are trying to create some bench strength to say, okay, where is the next sort of quote unquote African American person that we can have join our board? And and we're looking for professionals. And I think that's where some of these organizations are trying to identify those folks. Project Blueprint, I know that's part of what they're there to do. So what we need to know is that those are organizations out there that do that. And then the folks that are on these boards, like myself, when it comes time to start looking for folks, we need to be able to go to these governance committees, to these board committees and say, hey, here's some folks that are willing to get involved. Here's some folks that are professionals. Here's some folks that are at these places. Now, some of this comes along with, unfortunately, with a little more age. So, the younger folks, as they get a little bit older, will be ready. But I think there's a lot of organizations out there that as you get involved on those boards and start to serve, you'll meet someone that says, you know what, I really liked what Courtney did. And I think I think that she would be a good person to do the next one. So it's getting a little bit of that experience and getting a little bit of that exposure to be put on a board. And that comes, again, sometimes it's chance, or somebody knows you, or somebody says, you know what, why don't you join this board and get your feet wet? And then somebody from there will see you and say, you know what, she really impressed me, or he really impressed me. I think that would be a good opportunity. But formally, there are some organizations out there, and I see Mary Vasquez, bobbing her head saying, yeah, so you've started well by being on that United Way, the Project Blueprint. And from there, you build your circle, so to speak. And as those folks get those opportunities, it's incumbent upon us to bring others along and have them replace us as we come off.
So Stephen, really quick. So I feel like, because I sit on quite a few boards right now, and I feel like I get asked to sit on them quite often by a variety of organizations. And I'm like, I know there are other young Black women like myself that can sit on different boards. And yes, have I been a mentor or advocate or whatever the case may be for them? Absolutely. But there are more folks throughout the city of Houston, most diverse city. And it's like, how are we not tapping into all of these resources? I've been on Blueprint, I've been in Houston Black Leadership Institute, ALF, all of these different networks. And so I've had the opportunities, which have been great, but I know there are more people. So how is that going to be built for those other folks to have those opportunities?
Yeah. So
I know we don't have all the answers today, but that's just something that I'm thinking of, that's where my mind is going.
Yeah. And I think ultimately too, it's this fear of the unknown as well. So, these boards are comprised of people that look alike, and you know what I mean? So as we start getting more folks that look like us, that unfortunately we've all heard it. It takes time, but I think now there's not a better time now than what is going on in the world and where it is shifting for younger folks like yourself. So it's not necessarily saying be patient, but I think if you're doing your part, Courtney, and you're encouraging others to do their part and you are getting involved, it does take a little bit of time, but I think that's where it ultimately starts. And especially if you yourself, if you're able to do, a couple of other folks and they're able to pay it back, then that will start to multiply, so to speak, that multiplier effect. But formally, I'm sure they're in the African-American community. I know, and like I said, at the chamber, for the Hispanic chamber and a lot of other chambers, they're trying to do that. And it kind of wax and wanes as to what's going on in the world. But I think this is the perfect time for minority folks to be able to have that seat at the table. And we just have to help each other get there.
Great question. Everybody's giving you thumbs up, Courtney. Great question. And thank you, Stephen, for answering. I'm going to call on another town hall member. And it is Armidi Rashidi. Are you here? Okay. I'm going to ask the question for this person. So what kind of training are you providing? We have lots of Afghan and illiterate women, unfortunately. How can you support these minorities? And this is a question for anyone in the audience or on the panel, or maybe a United Way representative. Anybody can respond to that one. Is that a?
Well, I'll just, since we're all kind of being quiet here. I think that would be one for not United Way doesn't have to respond, but yes. I think that's one for the United Way that could direct these folks to a organization that does that, to a leadership type organization that primarily might do that. Now, specifically for Afghans, I'm not 100% sure.
Right.
But not necessarily just giving you your stock answer of saying call 211, but ultimately I think connecting with the United Way, because I think that goes back to your question of how well is the United Way, or how well are we doing in the community? And it said not very well. So perhaps those are some things that the United Way, the outreach of it. So if you start with the United Way, or some type of organization to say, hey, where can I find this? There is almost an organization for almost everything. So perhaps the United Way could direct those folks to a specific organization that could address the question exactly.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. I see she's responding. She didn't have her microwave. And I think the United Way is what the person is responding in the chat here. Thank you for that response. And I'm going to move on. Mr. Powell, do you want to ask your question? I know you did one earlier and I referenced it, but do you want to ask this next question? Jeffrey Powell.
Tammy, thanks. Sure. The question was just general in regards to any panelists who want to answer. And my question was, how do you conceptualize and or rationalize the relationship between diversity and excellence?
Mm.
Well, hey, Jeffrey, it's good to hear your voice.
Always good.
I would say I kind of touched upon that in that I sometimes want to say, wow, this person's just not being professional. They're not, or like the day of a presentation, they call and say they're pulling their name out of the hat. Things like that, I get upset with that. But when I start to rationalize that, most of that is because the preparation is not there and the tools are not there. They may not have the wherewithal to do a PowerPoint. So I don't know if that can help answer your question, but that's something that I look at it and try to rationalize and not to be as opinionated and feel like our people need to be more professional.
Mm-hmm. Excellent.
Well, I think that diversity is just like people with different color, and the word, if it's there's some more color in it, it looks beautiful. So instead of a single color, it doesn't look as pretty as a multiple color. Right. So I always agree. I mean, like my company, we are basically minority-owned company. Mm-hmm. And we have all kind of people from you can find in this city, and that's what makes it pretty. And everyone with different background, they bring a lot of what they know, and you will realize a lot of things which you don't know. So diversity it's very important, and it makes this world beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that response. I have another question I'm going to read here. It says, what sacrifices did the panelists have to make during their ascension up the leadership ladder? That is a great question. And I'm going to start with Miss Anita.
Well, I guess it's really not a sacrifice when you find that you're doing what you love to do and you are blessed to be a blessing. So it's a way of giving back. So I would say that we sacrifice because we are in a lot of Zooms and we're in a lot of meetings and we're doing a lot of committee meetings and being here and there. And so that would be, I guess, the sacrifice. But again, too, looking at Stephen, I'm so proud of him and the fact that he came from his father's footsteps. Mm-hmm. I see that when it comes to my kids. They have witnessed what my husband and I have done, and so they want to give back. And Courtney, in just listening to your question as well, I have a son that is my oldest wants to get on board. He's like, how do I do this, Mom? And so the fact he kept courting Project Row Houses. I'm on that board, and I was able to say to them, this is a kid that grew up in your backyard. He came to events. He knows this campus. He knows what's going on. So I just think it hasn't been a sacrifice because you see the reward. It's great. And so Stephen, very proud of you too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And Stephen, then I think that's a perfect segue for you to answer that question or respond to that question.
Yeah, let me just add, what Anita and Gerald have done. It's I've grown up watching them as well, and so I think sacrifice. It's not necessarily a sacrifice, like she said. I think it's just kind of the perspective of how you see it. So for what I do, in our company, quick story, when I graduated, I did 2 years of banking, 3 years of banking with Texas Commerce Bank, which is now JP Morgan. And my father said, I want you to go see how the other half lives, because I don't want you to resent us if you don't want to do what we do. So watching my dad just work and my mom work, they worked together for 40 something years, and they did everything. And so I went and did banking for about 3 years, and I enjoyed it. I met a lot of great people. I saw how the other half lived. I saw what it takes to raise up through a corporate organization, and it's much harder. So I think that's where the sacrifice comes for minorities, is in large corporate structures, because there are so many folks, talented folks in all sorts of colors, vying for the same spot. So as an entrepreneur, it's different, because you work as hard as you want, but it never stops. So when you stop, you're fine. You can take off, and you can, but it never stops in your head. So you're doing that part, but you are in charge, and you can mess it up or you can make it great. So that's really, I think, the sacrifice you take as perhaps the entrepreneur, is that it never really turns off. And now that I have kids that are 12, I have twins that are 12 and a 7-year-old, they're all boys, and they've watched me. And my biggest concern now is that I'm hoping I'm showing them what we're doing, what my parents did, and I see it in them, but I just want them to work hard. And it's hard for them to work hard, because my parents worked really hard to make it better for me. I think I worked really hard to make it better for them, but at times I think I'm spoiling them. So it's this balance of, how do I show them that you need to be empathetic, you need to care about your community, because it's a broader sense that they have that responsibility now to do what I had to do, and they have that responsibility now to do what their grandparents had to do. And it just keeps going generationally as we get more educated as well. So it does take time. And so with that, it's not necessarily just a sacrifice, but it's just really, it's different, that I don't necessarily see it as a sacrifice, but it does never shut off. So that's maybe a little bit of a difference, is that I know in corporate America, it's tough, but I think some people have told me, look, when I go home, I'm done with it, and I'll pick it up again the next day. But I can get a call at midnight or something, or somebody's out, or somebody's got COVID, or somebody's not gonna be able to make it. Somebody's mother passed away. So it never really ends, if that's kind of, the sacrifice, I guess.
Thank you so much. Go ahead.
I have the same kind of feeling as Anita and Steve. I never feel to do all this volunteer work and the giving. I never feel it's a sacrifice, because I'm so glad that I have the ability to do it, and I always feel I'm blessed. And with all this volunteer work, I get to know a lot of very, very nice and interesting people like all of you. So I feel fulfilled. And it's always a gain, not a sacrifice. That's how I'm seeing it.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I'm reading a comment here. So kind of to one of the earlier questions, maybe Courtney and some other people, and even Anita, to your son. This is from Clara Cooper. She said one of her suggestions would be to in order to serve on the board, maybe start as a subcommittee of a nonprofit, basically working on a subcommittee, especially if you're having difficulties joining a board. By doing this, you have a chance to engage with others who can see what you bring to the table. So I think that's a great point, Clara. And I wanted to, let's see now, pivot a little bit to a few more questions. And I know, Angel, I'm going to turn it over to you here in a second. So let me take a couple of more questions, and I want to hear from, let's see here. Anita Nguyen, it was a question here that you've asked, and I want you to read that question, or I can read it for you and have you make sure that I've captured it correctly here. Hi, how are you? Do you want to go ahead and ask it?
Smithers. Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
This is so great to be connected with all of you. I feel like even the first time we met, some of you I met already, but it's amazing. And I appreciate Mary to connect me with this. And appreciate all from United Way to provide the opportunity. So I'm amazed by the diversity of our city. I came here in 1994 from Canada, and I saw the growth, and now we exceeded New York in terms of diversity. We have 92 languages spoken at home rather than English. So it's just a beautiful community, but I think it's kind of silo, right? Like I am very involved in the Vietnamese community. That's the community I care for. I have some connection with my other Black communities because I work in some coalition, but those opportunity to create a cross-cultural, cross collaboration from different ethnic communities, it seems like United Way or you guys will be the best people to put that together, and I'm very interested in that. And right now we are so divisive in the whole country, right? So how can we create something that everybody want to be well, everybody would love children and arts, something that bring people together, and we bring in different flavor of our culture and create something like the tapestry of city of Houston. I really look forward to something like that, but I have not seen it, or maybe I was not connected. So I'm looking for that opportunity.
I love that
Smithers,
language. Go ahead.
Do you mind if I pop in, and if I can also invite my colleagues, Mary Vasquez and Margaret Ozer, if there's other thoughts that you'd like to share. But I do think that United Way is uniquely suited to bring those voices together to help shape the community that you want to see. I know you've heard us say that several times today. And that's what we plan to do. We plan for this to be the first of many conversations that will begin this journey for us. But I wanted to give Mary Vasquez the opportunity to share other thoughts that she might have, our Vice President of Community Outreach.
Good afternoon, everyone. So excited to see so many of our friends out there. So appreciate you all making the time to come. Definitely, through our United Way Nonprofit Connection, we are launching a new DEIB programming that will feature trainings on DEIB, as well as more community conversations and convenings, and providing training to BIPOC leaders, leadership development, as well as nonprofit management training to BIPOC-led organizations. So it's an exciting new endeavor that we're hoping will start in the beginning of the year. So look forward to engaging many of you in this work, because I know it's critical to our growth, critical to why we need to continue to have these conversations and empower BIPOC leaders and organizations to be able to serve their communities. And so we can only do this together. So we are counting on you and look forward to engaging more of you in this discussion. Thank you.
And can you just define, I know DEI, but you said DEIB, what does the B stand for?
Diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging.
Okay. I should know that, right? More so for the audience, but yes. So I want to, let's see, I know we have like 10 minutes here, and Sylvia Brooks, I think she thought she was posting it to the group, but she posted it to me. Do you want to ask your question, Ms. Brooks? There you go. There you go, Sylvia. Go ahead.
Okay, I was just wondering if, and I'm not looking at my question, but what I was thinking of was the model of United Way, what people know, fundraising, allocation, some planning. Is that in any way, do you think, inhibiting people feeling comfortable in getting involved in the whole equity issue? And is the United Way the entity that can facilitate that? And anyone who wants to even give any thought to it or comment on it.
I can start from United Way and welcome my colleagues to join me. But I'd say when I started into this work 20 years ago, one of the things that really excited me about United Way is that we have the ability, and we do every day, bring together people with the greatest needs to those with the greatest ability to help, and we do so in such a seamless fashion. So I do think that we're uniquely suited to be able to have these conversations, to bring the community together. And I'm excited about what's ahead for us in 2022 as we execute our second century vision and invite all of you to be along with us on that journey.
Very
Yeah.
good.
I'll just quickly add, if I can, I completely agree with Angel's comments. And for those of you who don't know me, I came from the for-profit space. I came from energy. I came from an industry where there are only 28% women, and I was the first and only female to serve on the executive committee of my former employer. And so one of the things that was so meaningful for me as a United Way donor before coming to United Way as a full-time employee, and so compelling to me in taking this role was exactly the conversation we're having today, is our ability to really engage in equity building in this community and really have an impact across Greater Houston and across all the families who are working really hard, and we can help. We can support their journey. So for me, I agree with Angel. I think we're actually perfectly suited, both in terms of assessing needs and also in terms of leveraging the ability of the community to empower our friends and neighbors all across Greater Houston.
And that is a wonderful response. And I think I have the two final questions that I want to make sure that the panelists or the town hall participants can really hear the responses to these questions. And it is around that issue of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. I'm adding the B to the person that asked the question. But I'm going to allow Shakithwa Thornton. I want you to ask your question because I think it's a great question and it feeds into a second question that was also asked. So go ahead if you want to ask your question. Shakithwa Thornton.
Hi, I'm Shakitha. I'm new to the DEI space, so I was just wondering or trying to get thoughts on how do you deal with the skepticism that comes around DEI, and what are you doing to ensure that we're not just checking the box with diversity and equity and inclusion? Like, how are we not just checking the box, but what are we doing to kind of push away that skepticism?
And Dr. Yang, do you want to answer that question since you're in that chemical business space?
Well, excuse me, one more time about your question.
She's basically asking, how have you dealt with the skepticism of diversity, equity, and inclusion in your company? And how are you ensuring that you're just not checking the box?
Well, I'm not so sure, but
okay. Does your company have a person who specifically handles diversity, equity, and inclusion? I think that's maybe one of the part of the question.
Well, in our company, because basically everyone is minority, and we don't have such a special, not like a big company, right? Mostly are white. So basically, we don't have such a mechanism.
Okay. Are you familiar with the Greater Houston Partnerships Racial Equity Survey? Did you participate in that at all? Do you know within your company?
No, I'm not aware.
Okay. And I'm going to defer to then Stephen Fragas. What about your company? And I know you mentioned earlier that it is predominantly minority-led as well. Is there anything special that you've done in regards to creating diversity across the company?
Yeah, so I'm not sure if she was asking in the sense that we saw that she was with Lyondell, so I don't want to put Lyondell on the spot. So I'm gonna answer it the other way real quick. I think as minority businesses, we are aware of the companies that are sincerely in it to be able to help minorities. Then you've got the companies that have to do it either because of grant or funding. And then you've got companies that just haven't embraced it for whatever reason. And it doesn't make them bad companies. I think what you're seeing now with what the Greater Houston Partnership is doing, which I am a board member as of about a year ago. So I did get involved with the Greater Houston Partnership, and I told people sometimes you got to say no. So you got to pick and choose where you're at. But I had a lot of encouragement again from my father and from a few people in the community. Bob Harvey, very involved in the United Way, saying, look, we need people of color to be on this board. And here is a board of over 100 and something plus folks of the largest companies in the greater Houston area. And I've got my little company. So what they're trying to do, and I believe it is sincere, and I hope it remains sincere with the right goal and we stay focused, is to do this DEI and try to do it right. So there's a lot of companies out there that are doing it right. So you don't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel. So in a sense of where large companies, if they're just checking the box, because there are a lot of companies that do that, that's always going to be there. So what we've got to do is work with the companies that I think are sincerely embracing diversity. And again, it works with, it's not just supplier diversity, but as these large companies, obviously, to Amanda's point, where there are diverse folks in the C-level, there are diverse folks in the management level. That's where it starts. For a company our size, we did participate a little bit with the survey for the Greater Houston Partnership, Dr. Smithers, to answer your question, but it was a little more intensive for a company with a larger public.
And I did take a peek at that survey and the responses, but I see here that Amanda McMillan is going to, I think she has experience, probably with her prior experience. So she can answer that question for you. Go ahead, Amanda.
Yeah, Shakita, I can provide just a couple perspectives. I mean, I think there are many organizations who are focused on this, and so United Way of Greater Houston, right? We're not perfect in this regard, right? We're still working really hard to make sure that we reflect the communities we serve. So we have our own internal work we're doing as a staff. A lot of that is around education and training and making sure that we're looking at compensation benchmarking and all kinds of other things with an eye toward all of those elements. And the B is really important to me, right? The end game for that belonging piece. It's about so much more than diversity, right? It's making sure that you feel like you belong and that you can bring your full self into the work you do every day. In the broader for-profit corporate context, I agree with everything Stephen said. Every organization has a starting point. One of the really interesting things from the initial assessment that GHP did, which if you have not read it, please go to houston.org, go to About. There's a racial equity sub-tab, and you should be able to find the assessment there. So it's there for you to dig into. And I'm also on the partnership board, and we want you to dig into it. It's a really helpful baseline. We're the first major metropolitan area in the nation who's done an assessment of this kind. But at the corporate level, people are, organizations are at different parts in their journeys. If you have to go back to the very beginning, the good news is there is a ton of research by Catalyst and others that tells you that the business case for DEIB is incredibly compelling. The more diverse voices you have in the room, the better decisions you will make as an organization, and that will affect your bottom line. So, some organizations have to start at that base case and work up from there. One of the things that's so heartening to me is, and it's at the World Petroleum Congress that's coming up next month, is at GHP. We're seeing all of these huge groups now coming together to embrace not just that baseline business case, but understanding that it's about much more than that, and understanding that you can't just be focused on these principles, but really thinking about the tactics and the actual actions and steps every day along the way to make progress towards those goals. Because one of the things you'll see in that survey is there are a number of employees who have really good practices. They're not necessarily producing results.
Yeah, okay. I do remember one of the incidents from one of my supplier, which is a major public corporation, and there's one position which is opening, and I know some of those people over there, they want to have that job. And instead of giving to a white guy, which I think he is qualified to do that, but then actually eventually ending up is a black person to head that position. And I think that the major US corporations, they are serious to promote this diversity. That's from my observation.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, that's just one of the incidents I
Mhm.
see in recently, what has happened.
So I want to thank everyone for this engaging conversation. I believe I got to most of the questions, and there was two that I didn't capture, but I think we sort of answered it in a roundabout way here. But I'm going to kick it back over to Dr. Harris to close us out and provide us with next steps. So back to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Smithers. What a great conversation. I feel so energized and excited about what's to come. And so thank you for being part of this conversation today. Anita and Stephen, Wayne and George, we're so grateful for you joining us today and sharing your perspectives at our Town Hall Summit. We're planning a series of sessions in 2022 as we launch our pilot engagement, beginning with the Asian, Hispanic, and African American communities. We heard some of it today, but we would love to hear even more about the ideas from you and what you'd like to hear from those sessions. So please take a few minutes to complete the survey that is in the chat. And we'll also email that survey out to everyone who registered today so that you can take that. I also want to take a moment and thank the staff team who's driving this work. This isn't new to us, but we want to be better leaders in this area and continue to lead with intent. So your input is important. Thank you so much to Marilyn Morales, Xingping Wang, LT Price, Erica Hernandez, led by Debbie Span Bailey. We thank you for your leadership of this work. And we thank you to Evelyn McConnell for creating this great experiences for our guests. We appreciate all that you do. We thank you in advance for everything that's to come next year. Together, we invite you to sign on to a community letter to show your support for United Way. Each signer will be unveiled on our website on December 5th. So if you can text "Count on Me," all one word, "Count on Me," to 51555, you will get a link to the short letter that outlines the need in our community and how in our second century of service, we want to help families thrive and begin that journey to financial stability. Sign it and join us as part of this important movement. Finally, thank you for being part of our first United Way Town Hall Summit. And thank you for everything that you do as you help families in our community by sharing your voice and your talents. Have a great afternoon, and we look forward to seeing you in 2022. Thank you.
Thanks so much, everyone.